I think really we're all very much the same as people, and what we're all dealing with is the question of how to live life, and what we're also dealing with are what are the sort of most important questions that underlie that. How do I survive? What's important in my survival? How do I prioritize in my life what's important? And the difficulty we face, I believe, particularly in Western culture, is that we have been taught very largely to give away, if you like, our own personal decision-making power about things. So more and more it seems to become the role of governments, politicians, religious leaders, psychologists and other experts to tell us who we are. And not only to tell us who we are, but to tell us how we should behave. And to tell us how we should relate to ourselves, to each other, and to everything in our lives. And to that extent, in a way, state or so-called expert becomes parent. And we find ourselves in a position where these structures, these systems, can't answer the questions we're seeking answers to. Partly because the questions themselves are unanswerable. You can't find a pat answer to most of the deep questions that we ask. And I think also because, in a way, these questions, in order to ask them, in the past, we've had to go into the realm of myth. We've had to go into that other part of ourselves, that bigger part of ourselves, to seek the answers to some of these questions. And in a manner of speaking, that part of ourselves has been peripherized, has been got rid of, and it's been replaced by the so-called expert. So the so-called expert is, in a sense, a proxy of that older self, who stands there in authority and says, well, this is how you should behave. And by the way, the biggest threat to you right now is terrorism. And because of that, we're going to impose a whole lot of limitations on you for your own safety. We're going to make it more and more difficult for you to do things in your life. We're going to make it more and more difficult for you to follow what your own heart tells you, because after all, it's for your own good. We're looking after your well-being. When in fact, what we find for the most part is that that's not the case at all. In fact, most of these people have a vested interest in you, in some form, in taking your money, in taking your energy, and to be honest, and to put it harshly, in enslaving you in some way. And so to this extent, I think that we are a culture of uninitiated children. We've taken away the rites of passage that used to exist in all pre-industrial cultures. It doesn't matter where you go. All pre-industrial cultures had rites of passage, had initiatory rites of passage for youth. And part of that process, that process of initiation, had to do with a claiming of one's own capacity to decide how we choose to live our lives, who we choose to be, how we relate to ourselves, and also what we draw on from within ourselves to inform that part of ourselves. We've taken all of that away. And in taking all of that away, we don't make that transition from child to adult. To that extent, we remain children, and to that extent, the experts that posit themselves out there as the proxy parent do the job of directing our lives. So what I find a lot of is when people come to see me is this deep sense of frustration. A deep sense of frustration, and it will start with statements like, I really don't know what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know who it is that I am supposed to be. I don't know, I don't really know what to believe in. Now, when you look at these statements, who's going to tell me what I'm supposed to be? Because the concept of me being supposed to be something means that something out there needs to tell me what that supposition is. And so I'm going to go looking for an authority who can hopefully tell me who I am. who can tell me what it is I'm supposed to be doing. But in the end, unfortunately, it's a carrot and the donkey situation, because each time I'm going to be disappointed. Each time I'm going to feel further fettered by anybody who chooses to say to me, well, this is who you are, and this is what you should be doing. Because that's not coming from me. That's not coming from the depths of me. That's not coming from my greatness. That's not coming from my connection to the real, if you like, core of who I am. It's coming from somebody else and their projection on me and their agendas for me. And to that extent it's going to generate frustration, and it's in fact going to further my sense of separation. Because in a lot of cases these same experts will use fear and guilt as mechanisms to try and persuade me to do what it is they want me to do. And so the fear and guilt grows within me, and the fear and guilt turns inward and turns into a kind of incrimination of self. I'm not good enough. I don't know the answers to any of these questions. Who am I? I'm nothing. So therefore somewhere out there must be somebody who can tell me. There must be somebody who can look after me. There must be somebody who can make my life work. There must be somebody who will take care of me and my family. The unfortunate part about that is that all of that's an illusion. There is nobody who's going to be able to do that. Because the key to the questions that I'm asking at their deepest levels lies within myself. It lies within my connection to the greater, to the whole, if you like. And to the extent that that connection is in any way severed or peripherized, or that part of me is peripherized, I don't have access to answers to those questions within myself. And I render myself vulnerable to being manipulated by outside forces, by governmental forces, by economic and banking systems and so on. I become like a leaf blown on the wind by all these different forces, and I become frustrated. I feel guilty. I feel in some way separate. I feel isolated, and I feel lost. And I continue to ask the questions that I'm prompted to ask by that culture outside of me, which are, what should I be doing? The emphasis being on the word should, because I can go to just about any expert I choose out there in the world around me, and I'll find answers to that question. You should be a better person. You should be working harder. You should be putting your money in my bank. You should be abiding by the laws of my country. You should be bowing to this president or that minister or someone else. You should be buying your stuff from this corporation. And we have come to believe that these are the answers to these deep fundamental questions we ask within ourselves. And then we can't really understand why all it seems to do is make us more frustrated, more isolated, and more cut off in general. So in that way, in that sense, I don't believe it matters really what a person in a way puts out there as the issue they're trying to deal with currently. In the end, it comes back to these primary dislocations that we have as modern human beings. And in the end, I believe that the only real answers to even the simplest questions we ask in our everyday lives are going to be found in that much deeper aspect of who we are. We have to get back to that place within ourselves. At the moment, we have no idea how to do that. We have no idea how to do that principally because we have been taught that our own inner understandings, that our own gut response to things, that our own inner directive is fundamentally untrustworthy and potentially dangerous, and that therefore it should at very best be ignored and at worst be completely peripherized, marginalized and got rid of by any other means possible, and that we should then go out into the world and look to the outer institutions and materiality for the solutions to our problems. And it then makes sense to believe that the more I have materially, the better off I'm going to be. The happier, the better off my family is going to be. The more of a sense of my own deep connectedness I'm going to have. But when we look at it here, sitting in this situation of questioning, it's obvious that, the illusion that is inherent in that understanding. it's obvious that that is in fact a pathology. It's a deep neurosis. It's a deep neurosis which has been set in motion fundamentally by, number one, our separation from the natural world, and number two, the extraction from our lives of all the meaningful rites of passage that helped us reconnect with who we really are.